You're listening to the Electronic Media Collective Podcast Network. Yeah, it's a mouthful. For more great shows like the one you're about to enjoy, visit electronicmediacollective.com. And now, our feature presentation.
This is Melanie, and in the future, you'll be able to purchase memories. So, that girl that said no to the dance, well, now she says yes. And that time you fell on your face and lost that race, well, now you win it. So everybody can be the overconfident douche that we all wish we could be.
This is Jesse, and in the future, local government and meteorologists will collaborate with car makers to create safer road conditions. Unfortunately, this will lead to executive overreach where cities will now be able to shut down your cars and force you to stay home during snow emergencies. So bright side, no car wrecks. Downside, you're staying home, whether you like it or not. Big Brother is watching.
This is Randy, and in the future, Microsoft Outlook will come up with a feature to make it easier to search through your old emails so that Randy can find his future prediction list for Matt D. Welcome to the Grawlix Podcast. Thank you, Matt D.
Yep.
This is episode 60. What did we?
80.
88.
60, 80.
80, 88?
88.
88.
Or is it? Or was I just misdirecting you?
No, it's 88.
This is episode number 88. It's a pull list episode, ladies and gentlemen.
What's a pull list?
I'm glad you asked, Melanie. So a pull list it's a pull and a list, and you can find it on our website at grawlixpodcast.com. And what do we mean by pull and list? It's a list of comics. That's also a poll, so you can vote on this list of comics. You can also add your own suggestions to this list of comics. And every month, we look at the one in the number one slot with the most votes, and that's what we read for next month. Last month, the winner was Blood Realm.
Ooh.
Blood Realm. And so that's what we're going to be talking about this episode. We'll be discussing Blood Realm issues 1 through 3. And next poll list episode,
We will be looking at... It's weird. I feel like we've read some of this guy's stuff before. We'll be looking at Outcast by Robert Kirkman. I feel like he came up last episode. He's winning with 31% of the votes.
Outcast. I've never read any Outcast.
I don't even know what it is.
It's by Robert Kirkman, though. He does great stuff.
I have some Humble Bundle Outcast, I believe. So That's good news for me.
Nice.
And good news to anybody that picked up that Humble Bundle. We have an affiliate link, right? Is it Grawlix Podcast /Humble?
Grawlixpodcast.com/humble.
Because we are.
We're humble. Wow, we transitioned right into promotion for this. If you're picking up a comic book Humble Bundle, you might as well find it through that link, and we may get a little kickback if you so choose.
Yeah, kick us some money back.
We don't have to get a kickback. You can choose not to give us money. That's fine.
Yeah, but that's not nice.
But you can still use the link, and it gets us, I don't know, karma, I guess. Good karma. Humble Bundle karma.
And if you don't like giving us money through affiliate links, you could give us money a little more directly if you wanted to become, I don't know, a patron.
A patron? How would they do that in this modern day and age?
You would go to patreon.com, and you can even search for us on patreon.com because we're out of jail.
Oh, I can't believe we haven't mentioned this prior. Yeah, we're out of Patreon jail. We were marked as adult only for a while, which meant we didn't actually show up on the site unless you searched for us, unless you went to our link directly. We're out of jail because we're not adults. We're not adults, and we're not adult only.
That's for sure. So now you can find us if you type in the Grawlix Podcast on the search bar in Patreon, or if you use the direct link.
Yeah, patreon.com/Grawlix Podcast. And you get all kinds of extra bonus stuff, extra bonus episodes like every month, and other fun stuff when we happen to put them up there, when we happen to think of it. Yeah, so this episode we will be talking about Blood Realm. Are we going to kick right into the comic?
Yeah, let's kick it.
Yes, let's kick right into the comics. We read Blood Realm, issues number 1 through 3. Mm-hmm. And Blood Realm is a series it's published by Alterna Comics, written with art by Robert Geronimo, lettering by Thomas Maurer. This is a 17+ dark fantasy.
17+, really? That's like NC-17?
Not NC-17. It's more like rated R. 3 supernatural beings, known as the Sisters of Silence, must embark on a treacherous quest to stop a bloodthirsty general from obtaining a sacred relic powerful enough to obliterate the last kingdom of men. This was added to our pull list, I suspect, by somebody who might have ties to Alterna Comics.
Yeah.
Maybe not, though. Maybe somebody just read it. It's like, you know what? You guys need some super indie stuff.
Can I give my overall opinion?
Of course.
I felt like I was watching one of those this movie in 30 seconds done by bunnies things.
Okay.
Yeah. I can get on board with that.
I think I kind of had the same feeling, but not quite exactly that. Mm-hmm. It felt like the prologue to a story for almost the entire story.
Yeah.
Is maybe why it felt that way.
And I think there are this is a limited series and they're already starting like the next one or the ongoing, or I don't know what the next one is, but this one's a limited series and I'm inclined to agree. This might be like, I don't know if it's a proof of concept or if it's like a prequel or if it's like previously on, whatever.
X-Men?
Yeah, X-Men.
Or The Walking
Arrow,
Dead.
But something that people actually watch.
I was gonna say, wait, those are the shows that come to my mind when I hear previously on.
Oh, yeah.
The X-Men. That's burned in my brain from when I was a kid.
They did. They had to do that a lot because all the crazy X-Men storylines.
That's why that cartoon was so good.
Well, but it does go somewhere, though. So that's why I say the 30-minute done by bunnies, because it's like they took the big important parts of an actual story and were like, here's this, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then act like that's the whole story. But that's not the parts of the story that anybody wants to read about. I mean, they do want to read about them, but you know what I mean? It's not like the characters' development or anything. It's like...
So to explain, listener, it's very much like there's like no speech like word balloons. Mm-mm. There might be some, but I don't recall any of it. It's a lot of, I feel, very nice art. Like I like the style. It's a lot of splash pages, full page art, and what would you call it? I guess narration.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
To me, it feels like it's all like prologue because it's a lot of world building. It's establishing. It's almost all lore. It's like this all grand story that you get in little snippets of narration that feels like it sets up the bigger story, what you're actually going to read. It's just that is kind of the story that you're reading. That's how it's told. And it does get to a point, especially towards the end, where it's a little bit more linear. You're following these characters as they're doing a thing. But it doesn't ever really feel like it switches out of prologue mode.
Well, that's because the voice of the person giving you all this information is, in the last couple pages, the person that it becomes the story about.
Meek.
Yeah.
This little
Meek. Which
character.
totally made me think of Reek from
Reek from Game of Thrones?
Yeah, that's what popped in my head. I don't know why. But anyway.
Oh man, I'm thinking about the story as with him now. The character would pretty much be exactly the same. So it's a little weird because it's like there's prose and artwork, and a lot of comics combine them a little bit better.
Right.
But that didn't seem to be the point of this one.
It's almost like they created the story via the art, like almost like a bizarre twist of the Marvel, like the old school Marvel method where they would do all the art. Of course, I'm sure they still scripted out what was going to happen, but like they did all the art and then they came back in later and they added the bubbles. And that sometimes is what this feels like. Like they made a bunch of awesome looking posters almost, or it looks like pseudo block print. And then they were like, okay, well, we know the story and now we have to tell it. Now we got to plug in the words.
I felt more like it was, like old manuscripts that they had like a bunch of monks do together. It'd be legends. Like, there'd be like a page of print and then a page of picture, because they'd have somebody else, they'd have different people doing the two parts, so that like this one person would just do all the story and then another person would come in and do the other stuff later. I
feel definitely like he had the story in mind, and maybe he'd written it all out long form, because at the end of each issue there are longer chunks of text that retell the story a little bit more thoroughly than what's actually in the artwork even. So I feel like he probably had it all written out, did the art, and then just kind of put the chunks of text to explain like what part of the story this is, where necessary. Or
they were going to make a Samurai Jack style cartoon, and then it fell through, so they were like, "Oh, well, let's just throw the words on the side now."
That's kind of funny, because Samurai Jack popped in my head a little bit a couple times while reading this,
because of the way the dark like swirls into different stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I didn't think of it, but it's perfect. You're right.
This sounds like a lot of criticism, and it's a little bit of criticism, I suppose, but I don't know that it's necessarily all that negative for me, because feeling like it never gets out of prologue mode is kind of a problem for me. But for the most part, like, it just feels like a different way to tell the story. It doesn't feel like your standard comic book style storytelling. So that, is maybe obviously throws me off a little bit, but it's not necessarily a serious negative. I think the most negative aspect to it is I just wasn't invested in the story. Like, I didn't really care about the lore. The problem is the lore's big, grand. You get this big, grand story, but there's no connection to anybody in it. Like, even after we are, meet Meek, really, I just didn't really have a connection to it. So for the most part, it was just like kind of cool fantasy land, not Conan the Barbarian, but that kind of fantasy world building story, backstory with some super awesome art, because I like the art a lot. And that's really my overall take on it.
Yeah, I'm kind of two minds on this thing. It's like I'm with you on the art. I absolutely love the art. In fact, I could have done without any words at all and not known the story. Like take all the words out. I probably still would have enjoyed flipping through the pages. I wouldn't have known why I enjoy it, but I probably would have enjoyed it as much or more than having a story kind of slapped in there. Now, on the converse, I think there is probably an interesting story here, but in this case, maybe it's the art that is distracting me from the story, because I love the art. Maybe this would be better if there were no art. Like if it were, because well, what it feels like to me is it feels like a prose story. It feels like H.P. Lovecraft meets J.R.R. Tolkien. Like it feels like Lord of the Rings meets some kind of crazy, insane Cthulhu stuff. And I love what it does visually, but like if you're going to tell me that story, I almost need my imagination to go crazy with it. Like take the pictures away and tell me the story. I might actually listen, but for now I'm looking at these incredible, almost woodcut looking prints that every single page tends to be.
Yeah. So the artwork is very like black and white, high contrast. There's no like gray tones and red. Yeah. There might be other colors, but I remember black, white, and red specifically. And it's like Jesse said, like woodcut, there's lots of intricate designs in some of the people's costumes, and just, I also really like how the pages are laid out. Like there are some pages with like sequential panels, but there are also several pages, and this is particularly at the beginning when it's feeling most prologue-y, where it's a sequence, but it's all blends together. It's not like individual panels. It's like there's the big like queen lady or whatever along the side of the page, and then you can see like there's a sequence along, smaller characters doing a sequence next to her. And I don't know, I just really like the layouts and the look of it. I will say I think the characters that intrigued me most what I was most interested in, and I think it's a cool idea to give this, like, maybe that's it. There's like no human characters to really grab onto, but I think he's a potentially super interesting character because his name's a little on the nose, but he's Meek.
Yeah.
But he's this like goblin, red demon-y looking goblin guy. And that's your narrator. That's kind of becomes your main character. And he's potentially awesome, but I was super fascinated by the three sisters, but you don't really get to know anything about him. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's part of what's fascinating by him, because they're definitely not quite human. They have these crazy powers, but they're also super mysterious. Mm-hmm. Like you don't get to know, like you get to know about Gorn and the queen's daughter, who you only ever see in like panels that talking about how she died and all this. You don't really get to know much about the three sisters.
And they have the Leviathan baby. That's interesting, but you don't get to see that either. It disappears.
And 3 issues isn't a lot to get stuff done. And this is a quick read.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Because even though I said, it's kind of prosy when there is like narration there, there's really not that much.
No.
There will be like a paragraph per page where the rest of the page is artwork, Mm-hmm. So it's a quick read. So maybe it's just a matter of like, it's not that the prologue goes on too long. It's just there's not enough of the total story there to justify.
Is it done? It's done then?
There's going to be a volume 2 that comes out.
Okay, good. Because if it was the beginning, it'd be an awesome beginning to a story. But as its own thing.
What's there feels like the first issue and a half to 2 issues should be compressed down to a few pages at the beginning of the first issue. And the story is following Meek and these 3 sisters.
Yeah.
Because when you break the story down to what it is, like that's conventionally, that's what the story would be.
Right.
It's just that prologue part is like almost 2 issues, and that flows directly into the actual like quote unquote adventure is still part of the prologue part. It's just all this story. And
a lot of it, I think, is unnecessary because it seems like they tell the story and then they retell it again, either closer to the situation or farther away from the situation.
There's stuff in the first issue that gets retold. Almost everything in the first issue, I think, gets retold.
Yeah. And
in the second and third.
Not necessary.
It's one of those things where I don't want to like, it feels like we're totally ragging on it. I don't think it's bad at all. And it's one of those things where I shouldn't, but I always feel a little extra bad for being critical of books that are by essentially one person. I know this had a letterer, but it was written with art by this one person. So it's this guy's vision.
Yeah.
So I just feel a little, I don't know.
Well,
because you're not picking on a team. It feels like you're picking on a guy. I'm not trying to pick on a guy.
It's not even necessarily that I think we're picking on him. It's
just
good.
My impression of the story.
It's good in general, though.
I agree.
It does make me want to read on. Like I legitimately looked to see if the new one had started, if they had issues of it on Comixology, because I believe it's out in print already. Like the first issue of volume 2 is already out on print, which leads us into a sidebar discussion. You guys read the digital version, and I went ahead and popped for the print version. I have mixed feelings about the print version.
Oh, interesting.
I do like it. But the thing is that Alterna Press is really doubling down on the fact that they're making things affordable, and it is super affordable. If you're even remotely curious, you are not going to spend a ton of money on this just to give it a look. You're not out a lot. It's very much worth your time to take a look at this. Because it's like
you got the physicals for like $1.50 each, right?
Yeah, they're like $1.50 each. And what were the digitals? They're like $1.
99 cents.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what? $3 total. $3 total if you're getting it digitally, and you get that instantaneously through Comixology. I bought mine through their Alterna store, which I think is like an Etsy shop. The disappointing thing for me about the process was that the shipping legitimately cost more than the comics.
Yeah.
It cost $5 to ship them, and it was $1.50 a piece. So I was like, if you're going to do that, you kind of need to make it worth your time in terms of ordering quite a few issues. But even then, I didn't spend a lot of money. I mean, like, you can't go to a comic book store and grab you can grab 3 comics from a local retail store for the same amount of money as I did. I mean, like, because each comic is probably going to cost you upwards of $3 anyways. So I mean, did I really lose out? No. And I supported a little bit more indie group. So I don't feel bad about it. But at the same time, looking at the printing on newsprint, it washes things out a little bit. I feel like it would have been a little bit more high contrast if I had just gone with the digital. So I'm interested to see what the digital panels look like, because there's just something about newsprint that is a little duller, a little flatter. And I just hadn't remembered that because I haven't read newsprint for a while.
I know the newsprint thing is like, it's pretty clever of them. For one, to keep costs down, but they also use it as like a selling point.
It's like a retro chic kind of thing.
Yeah. It's like classic comics. We're printing on newsprint. I get it. Like, it's fun. But there's a reason comics don't print on newsprint.
Newsprint breaks down. It's like self-destroying over time.
Yeah, comics improved the quality, and moving away from newsprint was an improvement. But then again, you can still buy new music on cassette. So like, I get the point. I get using that as a selling point, and it's clever.
Can you buy new music on a record?
Yeah. Oh, you can buy music on a record easier than you buy music on a cassette.
Okay.
But you can still get music on both. 8-track, that's where it's at. That's the next, that's the next phase. Hipster music is 8-track.
Super tough to find that. Good luck. your custom 8-tracks.
Yeah, I was curious to see what the how the newsprint would fare. I guess that's kind of a downside with something like this, because it does look so good. I would think in a nice print copy, this would look great with some of the artwork. But then again, maybe the newsprint adds to the kind of 80s fantasy feel that this had for me a little bit.
Yeah.
Or maybe we could be like, hey, do a Kickstarter. We'll have you on the show.
We'll give you a confusing review for your possible Kickstarter comic.
Well, like there is an artist, Franz Mazaril. He was known for doing basically graphic novels in the 1920s. He's a German expressionist and a big influencer on me in terms of like artwork that I've done. And that's kind of what he did, was just stark black and white block printing and told stories without words. That's what it made me think of. And then I got the newsprint, and I didn't get it in that full, that full black and white experience. And I was like, oh. And it also made me wonder about like the process. Like, I don't think these are actually woodcuts. I'm pretty sure this is created digitally, but it mimics a woodcut in so many ways, in right down to the way that it's got like a distressed, almost wood grainy type of look to a lot of the panels or a lot of the plates. It's just like, I would have liked to seen this up against a full, true, bright white, as opposed to this kind of grayish newsprint. So it was good, but I think it could have, with the contrast pumped up a little bit, it would have looked even better, a little sharper.
The releasing schedule is a little strange, but that kind of seems to be common with indie publishers that aren't necessarily like bound to diamond type releasing.
Right.
Because when we were searching this out, part of the reason Jesse went with print is because issue 3 wasn't available digitally at that point in time. I don't know why.
Right.
It wasn't in Comixology, and I could not. There's some digital copies you can buy from their Etsy store, but I think they only had issue 3 for digitally.
Yeah, it was something weird like that.
So Jesse ordered the 3 print copies, the 3, 1 through 3 in print, and then I think the next day or so, they had all 3 up in Comixology, and I bought those.
Yeah, it was literally like that. Like the next day, it was like I had just bought them, and I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah, I would say Alterna. Like, your site's nice. I like their site. I kind of wish I knew where they'd prefer us to go, and maybe they don't care. You can get to their Comixology listings pretty easy from their site, but for the most part, I kind of wish how to buy comics from them was a little bit more straightforward.
Yeah.
To get the physicals, you do end up going to their Etsy store. In itself is a little weird. I don't mind that, but I don't know. It's a little confusing. Like, I had just a slight moment of like, I'm trying to buy these comics from you, Alterna, but I can't. Where do I get these? I should not have to bust out my Google Foo to buy your comics.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just we happen to hit it at a weird time in terms of their releasing, and I have no idea what goes into that, the decisions for that. I know I've heard some indie publishers say like it'll be on Comixology sometime soon, as soon as they approve it. So like I know it's not always on them, you know.
Yeah.
Right. And they have a lot of indie people too. So it's not like it's just a couple of creative teams like the big two have. It's like everyone's their own show.
Everyone is their own show. Can you imagine if everybody was their own show in life?
Like the Truman Show.
Yeah.
We're not going to talk about the elephant in the room when it comes to Alterna Comics.
Me?
No, not you. Jeez, Melanie, don't be so mean to yourself.
Self-deprecating today.
But I will acknowledge that the elephant exists. Jesse and I I know I'm bringing it up, and maybe I'll cut all this, but we had a brief discussion in Messenger the other day before recording this episode about whether we should even mention it.
Right.
And we have intentionally not dove into this thing. And if you have no idea, if you're like Melanie, and have no idea what we're talking about, this is all going to sound like nonsense. But if you know, and chances are if you're clued into the comic community online at all, you know, we've intentionally not ever touched that topic because it's such a toxic discussion, if you even want to call it that, that once it sticks on you, like you can't get it off.
Right.
It's just there. I feel like Alterna has that issue where it's stuck on them.
Right. Yeah, for better or worse, they kind of made their bed.
Yeah, that's all. I just wanted to acknowledge it without actually going into it.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I think even acknowledging it, though, it's going to be stuck on us.
No, there's nothing stuck on us.
It's trailing behind. It's like nasty toilet
Why-
paper,
why
public
we-
restroom toilet paper that's stuck on the bottom of your shoe, trailing behind.
It's
now.
like reporting the
Or-
news, though. We're just saying, hey, it happened.
Yeah, and I don't even know what it is. So how can it be stuck on me? I know. It's like that one time when I had a pad stuck to the bottom of my foot.
a panty liner pad.
Yeah, a panty liner pad. It wasn't like gross or anything. It was just happened to get stuck to my shoe, and I didn't notice until I was out in public.
It's just this unpleasant thing that nobody wants to deal with. We all know it's there, but sometimes you see it. Sometimes it gets stuck on your shoe. You can't get it off.
What's the stuck to my... Oh, never mind. There's nothing stuck to my
And
shoe.
I can't get it off. Like, it's not like you can just be like, huh. You gotta like lift your foot up and peel that off, and you can't just do that nonchalantly.
It's the
It
type
doesn't
of stuff
happen.
it takes a stick to get it off your shoe, and then you're just working at it for a while. Oh wait, that's not panty liner pad. That's something else.
Whoa.
This is the best conversation about that anyone's ever had.
This is the this is the kind of commentary that you come to Grawlix for.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I appreciate how blissfully unaware horrible internet stuff Melanie is.
Yeah.
It's because I don't.
You're not keyed into it at all, which is not bad.
I get on the internet. I look at sciencey articles, and that's pretty much it. And then I get off. And sometimes I get on Pinterest.
Oftentimes I'll mention things, and then I'll have to explain it to you. There's certain things like that, and not long ago, I think I had to explain to you what SJW was. I think that got cut from an episode. I don't remember if it ended up in an episode or if it was before we recorded or what. But I just appreciate that you just don't even know. You don't care. Mm-mm. But there's certain things when it comes up, and I'm just like, never mind. You don't want to know. You're better off not knowing. Just don't worry about it. There are definitely a lot of conversations, not just about this, but a lot of stuff going on online right now. Some of it's important. Some of it's not. Some of it's just pointless bickering.
Yeah.
I don't know. To wrap up, would you guys recommend Blood Realm?
I would recommend it when the rest of it's done. And it's an actual full story. I think I would recommend it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't know if waiting from issue to issue, because it's such a quick read anyways. I don't know if that would have improved the reading experience at all.
Not at all. No, I wouldn't be able to tolerate that.
I'll definitely add on to that, you know, of course, depending what volume 2 is like and where it goes. This, I think, once it's he's told the story he wants to tell. I'm not necessarily going to say whether it's complete or not, but once he's told the story he wants to tell with it, I think would make it a pretty killer trade, like a collected, like a graphic novel.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
On some nice white paper.
Mm-hmm.
The price point's pretty good. It's interesting. It's unique. I would recommend it to certain people if I knew they were into certain things, like fantasy, especially. There's not really barbarians, but like it makes me think of Conan.
No, you need to be like, hey, if you want to see Lord of the Rings in 30 seconds done by bunnies, then you'll love this.
Kinda, yeah. But it's
or better yet, done by Samurai Jack.
Yeah,
yeah, there you go.
I think if you like dark fantasy stuff and if you're a fan of certain kinds of artwork, like I definitely recommend this. I think it's interesting. I don't know that you'd necessarily have to go search it out. It's not necessarily a must read, but if you're looking for something different and you want to check out something indie, yeah, I'd recommend it.
It checks a lot of cool boxes. I mean, like I say, it reminds me of H.P. Lovecraft. It reminds me of Lord of the Rings. It reminds me a little bit of like the Dark Crystal, especially once we started talking about like how it feels like a prologue. The Dark Crystal had a prologue at the beginning of the movie, and it kind of reminds me of this too. So it's all those things plus super interesting artwork.
And I want to find out what happens to Meek, because he ate that thing and then what, does he turn into a bad guy?
Well,
or does he become all powerful? Or what happens? I just want to know.
I can tell you, the meek will inherit the earth.
That's good.
That's probably where it came. I will say the world that it's building, there are some kind of interesting, somewhat unique elements to it. The actual story, it's a little generic.
I had a question though.
It's a little generic.
So they talk about the world of man, and then they talk about something about humans. So is man in this human man, or is man in this some other creature that is man, and then humans are humans?
No, I think it's human man.
Okay.
Who's your favorite character? Like either design or like story-wise, story beat?
I don't know that I think story-wise, my favorite character is the three sisters.
Yeah.
They're pretty interesting and like weird. And they seem, I guess they just look like nuns, but they seem the most unique. They seem like the most original characters in this.
I was thinking that they were like the three, they share an eyeball. The three fates, maybe?
Oh, yeah. From Greek mythology, yeah.
That's why I was thinking they were at first, but then they weren't. And so I was like, okay, well, that's cool. That's better then.
It definitely sets them up to be super powerful, and it's not that they aren't. They are, but they also, like, spoilers, kind of get dispatched fairly quick.
Yeah.
But then again, that's also kind of down to this feeling very compressed, where we see them in 3 encounters. In each of the encounters, one of them gets killed off. So, like, there's not a sense of, like, other encounters where they didn't get killed off,
The one kind of does it herself.
Which one?
The last one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But she was there to do what she was supposed to do.
Well, and that ties into one of my favorite, like, designed characters is this weird Lord Cyphus. His face on the 3rd issue or whatever. Super interesting design.
I would say design-wise, really just because of what he did with the artwork, I kind of like the Queen because...
Oh, yeah.
She just looks like, whatever, Queen Lady. But then at one point, it's just like she started aging or something, or like melting. Yeah. And like it cuts to her later, and like she's got this crazy cracked up zombie face. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
I thought that was super cool.
Yeah.
Meek's not a bad looking character either.
Yeah. They're all pretty good. Gorn is like, he's not my favorite, but he has some really cool.
Is he the one with the sword arm thing?
Yeah. Yeah. He's the king of the Satyrians or whatever, or the general.
I love the sword arm thing because maybe that's why it feels like old school fantasy to me, because that nowhere near that good. I was never that good at drawing, but that seems like something I would draw when I was a kid, like a dude with a sword arm. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
It's like this big wide blade on his for an arm.
Well,
it's fun.
when we first started reading it, I was a little concerned it was going to be like the Babadook. And I was like, but then it wasn't like that at all. I love their eyes sometimes. They're all like, ah! You know,
Man,
like,
they get
the
freaked
sisters
out.
or all of them?
Things freak
Yeah.
out in this story.
Also, I thought Gorn got killed and then he showed up again.
Yes, yeah, that was a little confusing.
It's
yeah.
just Mortal Kombat rules where it doesn't matter.
Well, because
Maybe that was somebody before Gorn.
was it at the end of issue 2? It looked like he died, and then they're all in there with the heart, and then they walk out, and nope, he's fine.
He got better. I don't have any letters. What do we got for in-house news? I know the main thing. Listeners are going to get tired of hearing this.
Are they?
In June. No. In June, we're going to be at the Ocon Expo 2019.
Is it that far away?
It's going to be here before you know it, though.
And this episode goes up on the 18th, yes?
Yes.
Okay. So if you haven't listened to our episode from the earlier part of the month, where we got a message from Jerry the Gnome, where we interviewed Jeff Geegan, this weekend is Grand Comic-Con. And if you're interested in, if you're in Nebraska, this is probably not going to do you any good if you're on the East Coast. But if you're in Nebraska and you want to travel to Grand Island, I will be setting up shop with the Tank Zombie Studios booth. I would love to talk Grawlix Podcast. I'll have our contact information and stuff there as usual. But you can find me there. You can also find our guest from the last episode, Jeff Geegan, and his son, Declan Geegan, will be there, as well as several people that we, interact with and know in the podcast and artistic community. So that's coming up.
Yeah. Be there. It's free.
It's
Be
free.
a square.
It's a free convention. That's pretty rare.
It is.
Yeah.
You actually have, you'll actually have money so that you can eat. Weird.
Whoa.
You might even be able to buy things at the con. I don't know why any con would ever do this. Other than
No, those aren't cheap to put on.
no.
GCU's back. We're in the middle of season Tarantino, talking Tarantino movies. And we're going to have guests this season. Melanie's going to be on an episode
Yeah.
talking about 4 Rooms. Grindbin will hopefully be on an episode. Jesse's going to be on an episode.
Yeah. Like my favorite of all the ones that you've kind of thrown out there for Tarantino is True Romance.
Really?
I love that movie. I love it.
Are you haunted by shadow people in the middle of the night?
Do you secretly love all things creepy and spooky, enjoying ghost stories and horror fiction from the best storytellers?
Do you have a true ghost experience you want to share, but no one will believe you?
If yes, listen to the professionals on What Are You Afraid of? Horror Paranormal Show Friday nights at 9 p.m. on Para X Radio and at www.whatareyouafraidofpodcast.com.
What are you afraid of on Para X?
Our creepy and demented hosts are on call to provide you with all your spooky needs with true ghost stories, interviews, indie music, and new horror fiction. We are ready to scare you.
Para X.
This has been Randy. Steel isn't strong, boy. Grawlix is stronger.
This is Jesse, and one does not simply walk into Grawlix.
This is Melanie, and from deep within the bowels of the pit of hate, I summon Grawlix.
Thank you for listening to the Grawlix Podcast. The Grawlix Podcast is a production of the Electronic Media Collective and Vorpal Arrow Studios. For more Grawlix Podcast, visit grawlixpodcast.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/grawlixpodcast, or follow us on Twitter at Grawlix Podcast. We're also everywhere. All the time. All at once. I close my shades at like 3:30 sometimes, just because the sun's in my face. I don't want to. I want to see the outside world, but
that darn sunshine won't just stay in one spot.
I want to see the outside world, but it's just too bright.